Hello, friends and fellow lovers of all things beachy. Welcome to The Beach Speaks, the podcast that shares stories about the beach and our connection to it. I'm your host and beach lover, Paige Friend, helping you reconnect with the beach, return to your soul, and reimagine your life. So grab a cool drink, relax in your beach chair, stick your toes in the sand, and enjoy this episode of The Beach Speaks. Hey, beach lover. I love how the beach connects me with people in seemingly random ways, like today's guest, Ameesah Cotten. I recently signed up for a monthly podcasters networking event, even though none of the topics really resonated with me. AI, business strategy, and health coaching aren't exactly in my wheelhouse. But you never know who's going to show up, so I logged on and started hopping in and out of the breakout rooms, introducing myself like I was at a speed dating event. And I met some wonderful, interesting people, just not my people. Then I met Ameesah and instantly bonded over our mutual love for the beach and beach travel. Ameesah is a recent graduate of George Washington University's School of Public Health, and her connection to the ocean runs deep, all the way back to her very first trip to the beach when she was an infant. She suffered from eczema as a young child until her mom introduced her to the healing power of saltwater and sand, which then sparked a lifelong appreciation for the beach. Today, she turns to the beach for clarity, reflection, and renewal, and she's channeling that same curiosity and care into her new podcast, Sample Size of One, where she explores how we form our beliefs about health and healing. In our conversation, we talk about the ocean, how it continues to teach her about flow, surrender, and our deep interconnectedness with nature and each other. So find a quiet place to settle in, listen to the waves, and let's drift into this soulful conversation with Ameesah. Hey, Ameesah. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I am so glad that you reached out to me. It was fun getting to know you a little bit in our call before this recording. You said that you had some interest in, one, podcasting, and two, you had beach stories. And I said, okay, well, I love podcasting, and of course I love the beach, so let's have a chat.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the question I ask all my guests first. How's the beach speaking to you today?
It's a good question. I found myself more recently thinking about how interconnected the beach is with almost everything in my life. Today, though, the beach is probably telling me that I need to be there, that I need to go immediately.
I'm curious, when you were talking about the connectedness to the beach and to you and stories, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so the beach has been in my life for as long as I can remember. I have very vivid stories of my mom taking me to the beach as early as, I'm still not sure if it's 3 months or if it's 3 years, but I remember at a very young age always being at the beach. I struggled with eczema as a young child, and the beach, every time we'd go, my mom would lather me in the saltwater sand mix and exfoliate my skin, and that always ended up helping. And just being in the ocean just helped my skin a lot. And so I always, like, from a very early age, I always saw the ocean as something that was good for me. And then I guess kind of getting older, I loved to sit on the beach. I very much think of it as like a reset. The waves, from the sound of the waves to the people on the beach, or maybe silent beaches. I always feel refreshed and reset and ready to tackle whatever happens next whenever I leave the beach. So I don't know, it always finds its way back into my life somehow. I'm from New York, so on the East Coast, I have a lot of access to beaches on the East Coast. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, so what were the beaches that your mother would take you to? I got the feeling from our previous conversations that you moved around a lot. So I imagine you probably visited a lot of beaches.
I have visited a lot of beaches. I kind of leave it to my mom to keep track of all the names, but I can tell you some of the countries and the beaches that I've been to. And that includes St. Thomas. We've been to the beach in El Salvador. I love the beach in Jamaica. It's a very common island that my mom and I go to. And El Salvador more recently. We do Florida a lot. It changes every time that we think about where we want to go. We like to
Yeah.
switch it up a lot.
All right. Well, so let's start with St. Thomas. Tell me about the beach there.
Yeah. The beach in St. Thomas is incredibly blue. I know it's like the major adjective for water, but it's almost like the most beautiful blue I've ever seen. White sand, beaches, really soft sand. I have a very small story of my mom on the beach in St. Thomas. We actually rode in a submarine, and that was my first time experiencing being in a submarine. It was so cool.
All right. We have submarine. Now, that is the first that I have heard. And yeah, I definitely need to hear about this.
It was so cool. I was 5 years old. I guess my mom had planned it on the itinerary, and I was super excited. I had seen I've watched movies with some submarine scenes in it, and it was amazing. I stayed awake the whole time. It was very long. I remember it being about 3 hours long. I saw fish. I saw people working inside the submarine. And then, of course, there was a guide. So I was 5, so not too much that I can remember, but I do remember having a great time.
Do you remember, were there just big, large picture windows where you could see all the marine life, or they're just these little portholes, or just a camera shining something on a screen because it's a submarine and there are no windows?
So there were several circular windows, and then it kind of was like bench-like seating. And so you kind of just looked out the window to whatever bench you were sitting on, and you saw, as we moved throughout the ocean, we saw the sea life that would come by. Yeah, it was awesome. It was so amazing.
Well, that is really cool.
Yeah, and I compare it a lot to sleep. I again am connected to the ocean. I don't listen to waves when I go to sleep, but I listen to actually like submerged underwater fish moving. So it's almost like you have your whole head and it's quiet. It's natural aquarium sounds.
Beautiful. So you just kind of hear the bubbles and the current and that sort of thing.
Exactly. And so I listened to that, and that's what it sounded like in the submarine. I can remember the sounds. It was muffled, of course, but you could also just hear the bubbles and hear the fish kind of moving around in groups. Yeah, it was cool.
Do you remember any particular fish, or does anything kind of stand out? Were there sharks, or what was out there?
I don't remember because I was a pretty bad kid, and my mom, she was kind of scaring me the entire time. So if I misbehaved, she said, there are iguana on the Virgin Islands, and I was terrified of them. So she threatened me, quote unquote, with a iguana sandwich if I didn't behave. So I was like, I had that in the back of my head, so I made sure to behave.
Mm. An iguana sandwich. Your mother is very, very creative, I would say. Okay, so St. Thomas, fabulous water, and I understand the blue because there are so many different beaches and parts of the world that have different color blue water. Like I'm thinking of in Capri, there's this gorgeous blue. It's somewhere between like a navy blue and a royal blue. And I mean, you just can't describe it.
I'm pretty sure that the ocean is why my favorite color is blue. Like from traveling to each ocean, I've seen the different shades of the blue, and I know that blue is very strong in my heart, and it's from the ocean.
Yeah, my favorite color is blue as well. Yeah. All right, so we've been to St. Thomas, and then let's see, take me to Jamaica. So what's your favorite beach there?
My favorite beach in Jamaica is called Love Beach. Very blue waters, white sand, more like tan sand, amazing palm trees, and also stray dogs. So like I remember the stray dogs.
I was going to ask you, were there a lot of people there, families, like locals or whatever? I didn't imagine stray dogs.
There were also people, of course. I kind of cared less about the people. But I guess the time that really stands out to me is when my entire family and I cruised, and one of the stops was in Jamaica. We went to Love Beach and spent the day. It was a lot of fun. They had frisbees. My little cousins were there. Family in the ocean is a lot of interconnections that I sometimes miss and that I find my way back to when I'm having conversations like this or talking with my mom.
Yeah, yeah. I've had several guests recently from Puerto Rico, and their culture is very family oriented to begin with, and their family activities, their family get togethers, and all of that would be at the beach. They talk about that all the time. And probably some of my earliest memories as a child at the beach were with my family, a very small family, just my parents and my brother and I. So it wasn't like we had this huge gathering of cousins, but I do remember playing. I guess maybe we play frisbee, building sandcastles, and having running races, trying to see how far you could run down the shore
Sure,
and
yeah.
back, and things like that. But yeah, I can understand that. So that was part of a cruise that you had taken. So they dropped you off at Love Beach, and then did they drop you off at any other beaches while you were there that you remember?
No, not quite. And Love Beach is kind of a little trek away from the port where the cruise actually does drop us off. So it's kind of a hike, actually. We do have to walk to get to that beach. And the result is always nice and sweet.
Yeah. So we've been to Jamaica, we've been to St. Thomas, and let's see, how about Florida?
Again, struggling with the names, but we have made our way down to Jacksonville. I've been to Melbourne Beach and then some other beaches in between. My mom and I, we'd road trip like every year from like middle school throughout high school. She'd drive down from New York and we find our way to Florida. But yeah, those Florida beaches I enjoy. I've never been, although I have on my bucket list Clearwater Beach.
Yeah.
Do you have an experience with Clearwater Beach?
Oh, absolutely. I grew up in Pennsylvania, in the mountains of Pennsylvania. When my parents were aging, getting in their late 70s, it was just untenable for them to live up there in the mountains in a home. When it snowed in the winter, they were just housebound. It was just miserable. And my father had fond memories of Clearwater when he was traveling. He was a professional singer, and in some of the groups that he sang with, one of their stops was in Clearwater. So he had great memories of that. And of course, I was living nearby in Orlando, which is maybe like 2 hours-ish drive. So my mother said, I guess we're moving to Clearwater. We found a really nice independent living facility that was probably 5 miles from Clearwater, not Clearwater Beach proper, but closer to Indian Rocks Beach, which is south of that. But that whole area from Clearwater on down to St. Pete and down to Sarasota and even further, the sand is really white and soft. It's the Gulf Coast, so typically the water is clear and not as active. The waves on the Atlantic coast, like here at Jacksonville Beach and on down to Melbourne, and there are higher waves. People do more surfing on the Atlantic side.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So when they moved to Clearwater, I was there quite a bit. And that was really when I decided that, you know what, I want to move to the beach too. This is my place. So, some things happened and I ended up at Jacksonville Beach. However, I highly recommend Clearwater or St. Pete if you have the opportunity, though, to travel to the Panhandle, which is starting, Destin, Fort Walton Beach, and then Pensacola and Panama Beach. That whole stretch, the Panhandle, is just magnificent. We just got back from Fort Walton Beach, one of my favorite beaches in Florida because what they call it the Emerald Coast. And the water is just like this emerald blue green. It's super clear. It's probably the closest that one can get to the Caribbean and not be that far south. It's really, really nice.
Wow.
Yeah, Florida has so many different beaches. Honestly, my least favorite is Miami Beach. It's super busy. The sand is kind of grainy, which is fine if there are shells and all that sort of thing. And the water is really beautiful. I think Miami Beach proper is it's just too busy for me.
That's fair.
It's yeah, I mean, but Miami is Miami.
Right.
It's nightlife and
Busy, hustle,
people and
bustle. Yeah.
music and food and
Right.
that whole thing. I like the more quiet, peaceful.
Or you can doze off for hours and come back and hop into the water and then maybe doze off again if you want to.
So, do you surf?
I don't surf, no. I actually have never, I find myself like having a lot of interest, but surfing probably has never been up there, but I'd like to give it a try. But mostly what I do, it's like a kind of like a cycle of going into the water, playing in the sand, reading, listening to music, and sleeping. It's kind of this ongoing cycle of all of those things. But with my family, we do like to go like play frisbee, and then we also like to just build sandcastles. Sometimes it seems to be more fun when we don't have like the tools to do like to
I'm just
build
going to
it.
ask you, are you the sandcastle person where it's got to be, you have the things that form the castle, or are you like, I call them the drippy castles. I'm the drippy one.
Okay. It's changed. So when I was younger, I would not go to the beach without my gear. I would come prepared. I'd have all the different size sandcastle, the buckets. I'd have all them. And it was, they were elaborate sandcastles. I actually remember the first time I built a sandcastle, I was with my godmom and she showed me, like bring the water into the dry sand. I was so amazed. I was like, oh my goodness, no way. And then she also showed me how to like, make it more like crisp it up. But yeah, for when I was younger, that was my interest, was sand art. But it's changed now. I'm kind of, I'm older now, so I just lounge, soak up the sun, talk with my family, listen to the radio. Yeah, things like that.
I think anybody who visits the beach, I won't say everybody falls asleep, but I can't imagine anybody who doesn't feel a little sleepy listening to the sound of the waves, because that naturally calms down your nervous system, and the repetition of the waves and that sound, it just indicates to your brain, okay, we can calm down now.
You really do need it. Yeah, absolutely need it. Well, through college and graduate school, down to even high school, like I get stressed, and again, similar to what I said a little earlier, I go to the beach and I completely reset. And it felt good, just kind of decompressing, get to read my book. And my mom is an avid believer, is if you don't get out by like 6 a.m., maybe earlier sometimes, the day is wasted. And so I've had that instilled in me. And so yeah, I spend a long time at the beach, and I'd be able to get all my things done, like napping or listening to music. And there's never any rush. I really love that aspect about the beach. I never feel like until it's time to go, my mom's like, yeah, we probably should try to miss traffic. That's when she kind of puts the hustle and bustle in her step. But for the most part, I definitely walk away feeling rested and good.
Do you remember, moms are like this, you got to put sunscreen on, and they're like slathering this stuff all over you, and you're just, and of course you're probably wet already because you ran out in the water before you were supposed to.
I remember it. I remember my mom spraying the sunscreen in her hands and just like mowing me down. I remember they're great memories. They're great memories.
I once asked the question on Facebook, what smell reminds you of the beach? And so many people wrote in their favorite sunscreen or suntan oil. Back in the day, we had this called Bain de Soleil, and it was just like this greasy, it was almost like Vaseline, and it was tinted orange. So when you put it on, it almost looked like you had a tan already. It was probably some kind of cooking oil. Horrible, horrible. You live where now?
I live in Colorado.
No beaches there.
No, I'm very inland.
Yeah. However, you had lived in Virginia, right? Now, were you close enough to Virginia Beach? Did you ever go there, or any of the Carolinas?
Not while living, but we've been before. Been to Myrtle Beach.
Oh,
Myrtle Beach,
Myrtle
it's
Beach,
fun.
yeah.
Yeah, I actually, my mom had taken my sister and I and one of my best friends to Myrtle Beach while my sister was pregnant with my nephew, and it was fun. It was good times. Yeah, no Virginia Beach while living in Virginia, but Chesapeake Bay for sure. It was fun. I had went for my birthday, saw a couple dolphins.
Yeah,
I was buckled down with graduate school work. I'm learning now to be able to, like, you know, find times for the things that I love. Being an adult, I've learned to take time out for the beach because it's not as easy as it might have been before. And so I definitely have to put in an effort to make, you know, go to the beach.
yeah. We have a good friend in Tampa, St. Pete. She still has a home there, but she moved to Colorado recently and goes back and forth. So she gets to the beach and she gets to the mountains and she really, really loves it there. You know, it was interesting when you were talking about having eczema when you were younger, because one of my previous podcast guests had the same issue with her daughter. They were living in Chicago and her daughter was just covered head to toe, was just miserable. And the doctor said, she's allergic. You need to move somewhere because this is not where she's obviously thriving. And they thought, well, we're going to move to the beach because where does one go when you need healing, right? And just being in that salt air and the water really helped clear that up.
There's this story that I follow on TikTok. She's much better now, but it was basically a young woman who was struggling, who was living with topical steroid withdrawal. And it's a reaction of your skin after you've stopped taking topical steroids. The withdrawal included very scaly patches around her whole body, including her face. She moved to a tropical island, I'm pretty sure. I think Mexico, actually. I think she moved to Mexico and her skin completely healed and her skin is flawless, like it's insane. But she talked about the entire process. So we saw her when she was at the height of her TSW withdrawal, and you could tell it was uncomfortable, and it was very nice to be able to see kind of like the insides of what this process might have looked like. But yeah, it was insane. It was basically she traveled to the ocean and she was healed. The ocean is magical.
Those are stories I love to hear. Anything healing. And I think any one of us who has a memory of the beach or has been with somebody who's needed that healing has found it there. I believe in the healing of the beach, of the ocean, of the sea, all of that good stuff. All right. So we've been around Florida, up the East Coast. Have you been any further up, like to Massachusetts, Cape Cod, Maine?
Yes, New Hampshire. I forget the beach, but it's a beautiful New England beach. My mom and I had taken my newly born nephew. We took him to the beach. It was a rainy day, so we didn't get in the water, but we were dressed. We were prepared in case we wanted to. But yeah, it was cold and rainy, so we didn't make it to the beach.
I've never been to a beach in New Hampshire, but I just imagine the water is cold and that it's more rocky for some reason. Everything I think of north is
Yeah. And there was so much space in between, like where we parked to the actual like waves coming up on the water. Like it was like a good mile and a half. So yeah, I was surprised. I don't know what was up with that.
I keep referencing past podcast guests, but there's also a woman that I'm not sure. I have to see if she's still doing it, but she was recording sounds of the ocean. She lived in upstate New York, and whenever she would travel, she would take her recorder and just set it down by the water and record the waves.
Collecting sounds of the beach instead of maybe seashells or any sand. Yeah, that's cool. I like that.
Where else in the States have you been? Have you been on the West Coast at all?
I have not been on the West Coast. No, I hope to.
My father was born and raised in California, so we had some distant relatives that lived there. At one time at the beach, we went to visit, and I was probably 10 years old, and I'd never seen waves so big. I mean, these are like surfer waves, you know. They terrified me and excited me at the same time because you could see it starting to come and starting to crest over your head, and that the only thing to do, because I didn't surf, was just dive under and try to get on the other side of it. These things could take you on a tumble, and you're thinking, am I going to come up for air anytime soon? And then you come up for air and you're thinking, oh, thank God, I survived that. Let's do it again.
That seems to be a universal experience.
You got to get knocked down at least once.
And I've been knocked down a few times. I think I've gotten the hang of it now, and I built up my strength in my legs to be able to kind of stand my ground when a big wave comes my way. But there is nothing more humbling sometimes than a wave knocking you over.
Tell me about it. Yeah. And your bathing suit flying one way. I've had a few wardrobe malfunctions in that regard. Okay, so we were talking about the States, Florida, St. Thomas.
Yes, I've been to the Bahamas. Very beautiful. I usually like trek to the beach in Nassau. We don't like going to the ones that are like right off the port just because of like overcrowding and things like that. I really appreciate the beaches that I have to walk to and like really kind of put in a shift to get to.
Why is that? Like,
I like seeing the vendors on the trail that we might be walking, or the path we might be walking. I get to kind of immerse myself in the culture, immerse myself in the country. And then once we arrive at the beach, it's like, feel good. My tank is full. I'm happy. And now I can enjoy some time in the water.
There are some beaches that I am super interested in visiting in Hawaii. If I ever get there, there's a green beach. There's a black beach. There's probably a pink beach there as well, I'm pretty sure. So it's interesting the type of sand there is. I think in Thailand and some places like that, they have some really spectacular pink sand beaches and just those really remote, at least you see in pictures. You know, a lot of these Instagram pictures and things, they show somebody floating in water and nobody's around. But
right.
The reality of it is that you were one of 100 people floating around. They've just been kind of airbrushed out of the picture, you know. I haven't been anywhere in Australia. You know, Australia is surrounded by water, so therefore there are beaches practically all the way around. Everybody does the beach.
Yeah, I feel like it's easy to forget.
Is there a beach on your dream list, one that you're wanting to go to here pretty soon? Are you planning a beach vacation?
Not planning, but I have put in some time to make a bucket list recently. I actually have a friend from St. Lucia, and she loves where she's from, another Caribbean island that is just full of culture, full of good food, and beautiful beaches as well. So I know I want to make my way there sometime soon. And I'd love to see Brazil for the culture, the food, and the beach.
For sure, for sure. Thank you, Ameesah, for coming on and having a little chat about all things beach.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Paige.
The beach is speaking. Are you listening? What a lovely conversation. Hearing Ameesah share about the beaches she's visited and wants to visit brought back so many childhood memories, building drippy sand castles slathered in sunscreen and napping in the sunshine to the sound of the ocean. What part of Ameesah's story spoke to you? Have you had a beach experience that taught you something about yourself, or maybe a story you'd like to hear on a future episode? Click Send a Text at the top of the episode. Message me at The Beach Speaks on Facebook or Instagram, or send me a message through the website. I'd really love to hear from you. Until next time, take a quiet walk on the beach, breathe in the salt air, and remember, the beach is speaking. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Beach Speaks. If you enjoyed what you heard, please spread the beachy vibes and share it with a friend. Because, let's be honest, who doesn't want more beach in their lives? And if more beach is what you crave, go to thebeachspeaks.com and sign up for my newsletter. It's an easy way to stay in the know, collect some tips and travel hacks for your next beach adventure, and find out what I'm doing at the beach. The beach is speaking. Are you listening?